it is like 10 o'clock. You have everything done. You have about 15 minutes left before you are done for the night, and 20 people walk in. So how should you react to something like that? Or if you're in leadership, how do you respond to your cooks complaining about it? So first off, I know that this can be a controversial subject, but it is important to remember that two things can be true at the same time. On the one hand, the posted closing time of 10 p.m. is when the guests can no longer come in. It is not when we get to go home. This is what I explain to my cooks. It's crucial to understand that shutting the line down early could result in unexpected complications. They need to have situational awareness and understand the risks of doing closing duties early, and that it could potentially be a waste of time. With that said, it's also true that in general, it's considered polite for a group of 20 people, for example, to call ahead, regardless of the time that they plan to arrive. If they just randomly show up at the end of the night, we may not have enough prep to handle such a large group, especially if you think of like a 20 top showing up on a Monday night 15 minutes before close. Like, we probably don't have the product to make what they are looking for. We're thinking about things like food costs. We're trying to be efficient with closing duties, so everybody isn't stuck there 3 hours after closing doing things that they could have started on early. At the end of the day, we as chefs and line cooks have lives outside of work, whether that's family, friends, or just getting home to relax a little bit after a long shift, anything like that. Really, we should be working to live, not living to work. This whole like culture where you work yourself to death is just something that is like it's something that needs to change. So how can we balance these two truths while maintaining a positive work environment? I have some tips that I've written down, things that I've learned over the years of things that could potentially help. First one is communication, making sure to communicate with your team and front of house staff about potential late arrivals. Talking about it ahead of time and creating a culture when it's expected that at least one or two tables may show up late can help everybody stay prepared and be more efficient so we can all get out at a reasonable time without also diminishing the guest experience. The next tip I have is flexibility. So everybody on the line should have a flexible mindset and be ready to adapt to changes in the kitchen, whether it's late arrivals or unexpected rushes or anything else that can happen on the cook line. In simple terms, be prepared. That brings up the subject of prep work. What can you do as far as prepping go? Well, you can keep your mise well stocked. You can keep it organized. This way it's on hand so you can quickly deal with any of these last minute orders. Keep them accessible. Only wrap or put away things that you don't use very often while keeping commonly ordered products ready to rock and roll. So if you clean the flat top, for example, have something ready to handle orders that are cooked that way. Maybe run food on saute, for example. We actually used to do this, and we had like a really large pan that we used on the line, and we even made like quesadillas and stuff like that in there. Make sure you always leave your equipment on. Filter the fryer, but don't drain it. Leave some water on the stove in case you need it, cranked to like a low simmer, that kind of stuff. You don't want to get ahead of yourself and have things shut off and put away. That's really where a lot of the issue comes in. You can also encourage call ahead with the guests, and the way that you can do this is mostly for leadership. You can promote a culture of calling ahead for large groups, especially during peak hours or close to closing times, by doing things like updating your websites, posting notices in conspicuous places, posting to Facebook, Google, or anywhere guests will find your restaurant online. Now, you won't be able to stop this all the time, because if it's anything that you have learned in the restaurant industry as well as me, it is that people do not read. They will not read shit. But there is a good chance that if they are looking for a last minute place on Google to go, like, maybe they'll see this posted like, hey, we would really appreciate it if we got a call ahead, even if it's just like 20 or 30 minutes before you're going to be there. Gives us time to prepare, something that expresses what your expectations are without making them feel stupid or bad or wrong for showing up. So also, as a manager, one thing to keep in mind is why they showed up in the first place. So, like in most cases, the restaurant was a lifesaver because plans may have gotten canceled somewhere else, double booked or whatever. Maybe the restaurant that they wanted didn't have room, or it closed early, or other things. Like all kinds of things can happen where they would have had to have altered their plans. Your place was a last resort and a lifesaver. It could potentially make somebody's birthday or party really special and gain some regular customers in the process. So that's why it's always important to treat people, even if they come in when it may be a little inconvenient, right? So what are some other things you can do? Well, you can consider automatic gratuity for large groups. make it a reasonable percentage and inform the party beforehand so they don't tip afterwards. The reason for this is that servers would have to deal with a lot of this crap, and unless the front of house manager is going to take over this last minute table, the server handling the guests will probably end up being there even later than the cooks. You can also consider special menus or special pricing for the last hour to make things even easier. Now, you would think this would be counterproductive, right? Like, oh, well, it's half-priced appetizers, so we'll get a whole shitload of appetizers, and then we'll get a bunch of entrees and a bunch of desserts, and it'll just be a big mess. We actually tried this and got awesome results. We offered half-price apps, sometimes BOGO for the last hour of service. And in 99% of cases, they took the deal. They ordered only appetizers. It was super easy and fast. They were in and out, fast turn times. Everything was knocked out. Totally great. So this is something that will definitely help with your late arrivals. So what are some things that you should not do? For cooks, for starters, stop fucking complaining. Even if you hate it with a passion, even if it is the worst possible thing and you want to throw shit, don't do it. Leadership takes note of shit like this, right? That kind of thing and other little things like this will add up over time and could make it harder for you to get a future lead position. Now, obviously, I'm talking to people that actually want lead positions. So if you're somebody that wants to move up eventually, this is something that you're going to have to get used to, right? If you are already in leadership, you're the one that sets the tone. So if you go around complaining because there are people coming in at the last minute, you actually start creating a culture that says it's okay to bitch about guests coming in, and it will just add to the toxic work environment, right? So don't turn them away. Never, never, ever turn away late arrivals. Really good way to get a negative review. Treat the guests like family always. Well, at least treat them like a family with like healthy relationships, right? So there was actually this one server at my old restaurant that would leave the phone off the hook for the last 30 minutes of service. They got busted when the owner called. Don't rush them. Do not rush them. You have no idea how many stories I've heard of pissed off customers because the servers were being pushy. Don't be pushy. Don't ask if they want a box. Don't pressure them to do takeout instead. Don't keep bothering them, asking if they're going to be much longer, or just straight up being rude. Generally, anything that makes them feel like you're rushing them out the door. Basically, it's essential to strike a balance between providing excellent service to the people that are coming into your restaurant and respecting our own time and responsibility. So hopefully by following these and keeping an open eye and a flexible mindset, we can ensure positive experience for everybody involved, and that's the guest and the kitchen staff. I know my tips are not exhaustive, so if you have any of your own useful tips, leave them in the comments down below. If you found this helpful, you can support what I'm doing by throwing me a like. It's free, easy, and it helps my channel out a lot. If you're new to the industry or looking for tips and advice beyond cooking, you can start by subscribing to the channel and checking out the bloops that should be popping up somewhere. And if you want to support my channel in another way, I also just got my merch shelf up underneath this video. It's right down there. It's full of gear for line cooks and chefs, currently running a 15% off discount until May 11th. But otherwise, I hope the video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.